The Zalari council chamber was silent as the human representative, Commander Elias Voss, stood before them. Across the room, towering figures of different species observed him with curiosity and unease. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense, a ceremonial tribute to the many war gods present, except, of course, for humanities. Varesh, a Zalari scholar draped in flowing crimson robes, cleared his throat. His voice carried the weight of 1,000 years of tradition. Every advanced species has a war god, a divine force guiding them in times of conquest. And yet, humans, you have none. Why? Voss smiled faintly, folding his hands behind his back. Because we don't need one. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The idea was absurd. No race could survive the brutality of the cosmos without divine favor, without the blessings of war. The Zalari, masters of history, had studied every species' mythos, and yet humanity's records were empty. No offerings, no prayers, no sacred rites. Varesh narrowed his reptilian eyes. That is impossible. No civilization has thrived in war without a god's hand to shape them. Voss's expression didn't change, but his voice carried an edge of finality. We had one once, but he was too weak for us, so we killed him. A hush fell over the room, the weight of his words settling like a blade against the throat. The notion was unthinkable. Gods were eternal, their strength drawn from the devotion of their people. No species would dare sever that bond. One of the counselors, a scaled warrior from the Thran dominion, scoffed. Blasphemy! A god cannot be slain by mortal hands. Voss tilted his head slightly, his gaze never wavering. Not by hands. By will. The silence deepened. Varesh's voice came softer this time, as if speaking the question aloud might summon something terrible. Who was your war god? Voss's smirk faded. He exhaled slowly before answering. Mars, the great warbringer, the blood-forged titan. He was once everything we believed in. He led us through centuries of war, guiding our blades, sharpening our instincts. He was war, and we were his chosen. His might was unquestioned, his path absolute. The council listened intently, enthralled yet unsettled. There was something in Voss's tone, not reverence, but something colder. But then, he continued, Mars changed. Varesh frowned. Changed. Voss's gaze darkened, his voice taking on an almost imperceptible weight. He hesitated. You said, Mars had been a god of conquest, the relentless force behind every war humanity waged. His name was carved into the banners of empires, whispered in the ears of dying kings. He reveled in the chaos, the blood, the fire. But something changed when humanity reached beyond the stars. The wars grew longer, the enemies more merciless. And Mars, for the first time, wavered. He began to speak of limits, of restraint. He preached honor where there was none to be found. Mercy when mercy was weakness. He told his warriors that war should be tempered, that absolute destruction was not always necessary. It was then that his worshippers looked at him and saw not a god, but a flaw. It started as doubt, quiet whispers among the high generals, the war priests, the soldiers who had once carved their victories in his name. Mars was holding them back. He was no longer the god they needed, no longer the god they deserved. When the enemy struck first, burning entire colonies to ash, Mars did not rage. He did not demand vengeance. He urged caution. The choice became clear. If Mars would not lead them to victory, then he was no war god, and a war god who would not fight as his people needed had no right to exist. Faith is power, and gods do not die by the sword. They die when belief is severed. One by one, humanity turned away from him. His altars stood empty. His name was no longer spoken in battle. The prayers ceased, the sacrifices stopped, the banners bearing his sigil burned. Mars did not fight back. Perhaps he thought they would return, that they would see his wisdom in time. But humanity does not look back. And when they abandoned him, the god of war, the eternal, the mighty, the indomitable, simply ceased to be. Voss's voice carried no sorrow, no regret. We did not need a god who questioned, so we erased him. The council chamber was silent, but it was not the silence of awe. It was the silence of fear. Without a war god, Most species would have collapsed. They would have lost their way, become rudderless, stripped of the divine guidance that shaped their battles. But humanity did not falter. Without Mars, war became something else, not sacred, not righteous, not a matter of divine favor. It became instinct. It became art. It became theirs alone. The first wars without him were brutal. Without prophecy, without omens, there was only cold calculation. No rituals, no divine decrees, only what worked and what did not. Battles were won not through divine will, but through the raw, unrelenting force of human adaptation. And they learned, faster than any species before them. They refined war into something that no god could dictate. Other species, bound by their gods, still fought within the rules their deities had given them. Codes of honor, divine restrictions, traditions carved in stone. They prayed before battle, sought favor, believed that their gods would turn the tide. Humans did none of this. They did not wait for a sign. They did not ask for permission. It was in those first wars that the galaxy learned what humanity had become. Armies that had once relied on their deities found their prayers unanswered. Their war gods, so used to fighting other divine-backed forces, could not predict an enemy that followed no sacred path. Humanity was unreadable, unpredictable. No prophecy foresaw them. No divine rule constrained them. And so the legends began. Across the stars, the whispers spread, of soldiers who fought without gods yet never fell, of fleets that struck like ghosts in the void, of warriors who knew no fear because they had nothing to kneel to. Other civilizations called them soulless, cursed, abominations without divine purpose. But the truth was far worse. Varesh's voice was quiet, uncertain for the first time. If you have no war god, what do you fight for? Voss did not smile this time. Because we choose to. Varesh's grip tightened on the ceremonial staff in his hands. The silence in the chamber was suffocating, thick with something the Zalari scholar had rarely encountered: doubt. Every species present had built their empires under the watchful gaze of their gods, had waged war with divine sanction. The idea that humans fought without that guidance, without divine favor, was monstrous. One of the counselors, a hardened veteran of the Thran Dominion, leaned forward, his voice a growl. A species without a war god is dangerous. Without divine oversight, without consequence, you could burn the galaxy to ash. Voss met his gaze, unblinking. And yet we haven't. The words lingered. No one could deny it. Humanity had the means, the knowledge, the sheer capability to wage war like no other species. And yet, their conquests were measured, their campaigns precise. They did not expand endlessly, nor did they seek to dominate without purpose. Varesh's mind raced. A terrifying realization settled over him. War gods did not only serve to guide their people, they also served to restrain them, to offer limits, to ensure that war remained controlled, structured. Without a war god, there was nothing to hold humanity back. Then what stops you? Varesh asked, voice barely above a whisper. Voss's expression was unreadable. Ourselves. The simplicity of the answer sent a ripple of unease through the chamber. Every species relied on their gods to set the boundaries of war, to define victory and defeat, to grant glory or demand penance. But humans? They made their own rules, their own limits, their own morality. Varesh exhaled slowly, gripping his staff as if anchoring himself. And if you ever choose to abandon those limits... Voss's gaze was steady. Pray that we never do.